Hello. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عن جابر بن عبد الله الأنصاري عن فاطمة الزهراء عليها السلام بنت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله قال: سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت: دخل علي أبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله في بعض الأيام فقال: السلام عليك يا فاطمة. فقلت: عليك السلام. قال: إني أجد في بدني ضعفا. فقلت له: أعوذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف. فقال: يا فاطمة، ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به. فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به، وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال: يا أمه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن عليه السلام نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جده يا رسول الله، أتعذر لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين عليه السلام قد أقبل وقال: السلام عليك يا أمه. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي. فقال لي: يا أمه، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت: نعم، إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين عليه السلام نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا جده، السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله، أتعذر لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال: وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال: السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت: وعليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال: يا فاطمة، إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله. فقلت: نعم، ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله، أتعذر لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له: وعليك السلام يا أخي ويا وصي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي، قد أذنت لك. فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت: السلام عليك يا أبته. يا رسول الله، أتعذر لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال: فعليك السلام يا بنتي، ويا بضعتي قد عذنت لك. فدخلت تحت الكساء، فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إني هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم، وسلم لمن سالمهم، وعدو لمن عاداهم، ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، وأذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. فقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماوات، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمس مضية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا ربي، ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل: يا ربي، أتعذر لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي الأعلى يقرئك السلام ويحسك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك: بعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدحية ولا قمر منير ولا شمس مضية ولا فلكا يدون ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلك يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم، وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تعذر لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وعليك السلام: يا أمين وحي الله، إنه نعم قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء، فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. فقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء الملفظ عند الله. فقال النبي: والذي بعثني بالحق، نبي واصطفاني بالرسالة، نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن تفرقوا. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي الثانية: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق، نبي واصطفاني بالرسالة، نجيا ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم محموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مخموم إلا وكشف الله خمه، ولا طالبوا حاجات إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة.
شکریہ عباس تمہاری تلاوت ایک حدیث قصہ کی. ایک چھوٹا سا شعر ہے کہ قندیل عرش عظمت انسان ہے فاطمہ، شکل بشر میں آیت یزداں ہے فاطمہ، شوہر ملا خدا سے شرافت رسول سے، عصمت سمجھ میں آتی ہے نام بطول سے. اب میں گزارش کرتا ہوں محمد فیصل اپنے سلام پیش کرے پر محمد وعلی محمد صلوات.
درود بھیجیے.
نانا تیرے حسنین ہے ہم، غم مادر سنانے آئے ہیں. نانا تیرے حسنین ہے ہم، غم مادر سنانے آئے ہیں. تیری تربت پہ لاڈلے تیرے چند ٹکڑے سند کے لائے ہیں. نانا تیرے حسنین ہے ہم، غم مادر سنانے آئے ہیں. انما روز جس پہ پڑھتے تھے اب وہ دروازہ جل گیا نانا. انما روز جس پہ پڑھتے تھے اب وہ دروازہ جل گیا نانا. تیرے در پہ دیا جلانے ہوں اسی در کو بجھا کے آئے ہیں. نانا تیرے حسنین ہیں ہم. داغ دلوں کے کیسے دکھلاتی باپ ہو تم سے بیٹی کیا کہتی. داغ دلوں کے کیسے دکھلاتی باپ ہو تم سے بیٹی کیا کہتی. جس کی سا کے تالے تھے ہم سارے نیل اس کے تلے چھپائے ہیں. نانا تیرے حسنین ہے ہم. دل پہ آئی تھی موت کی ضربت، سر کے بالوں تک آ گئی غربت. دل پہ آئی تھی موت کی ضربت، سر کے بالوں تک آ گئی غربت. جب یہ کہتے تھے لوگ زہرا نے دین کا مسئلے بھلائے ہیں. نانا تیرے حسنین ہیں ہم. मुश्किलों से कदम उठाती है, 2 कदम चल के बैठ जाती है। मुश्किलों से कदम उठाती है, 2 कदम चल के बैठ जाती है। बिन सहारे वो चल नहीं सकती, जख्म ऐसे जिगर पे खाए हैं। नाना तेरे हसनैन हैं हम, गम मादर सुनाने आए हैं। दुरूद भेजिए।
शुक्रिया मोहम्मद फैसल तुम्हारे सलाम के लिए। एक छोटा सा शहर है कि ये मर्तबे हैं फ़र्श पे बिनते रसूल के, हुरों के गेसुओं पे कदम हैं बतूल के। इस्लाम फ़ातिमा की सीरत का नाम है, तत्हीर फ़ातिमा की तबीयत का नाम है, ईमान सब्र शुक्र की आदत का नाम है, ज़हरा किताब दर्द की आयात का नाम है। I would like to request Sheikh Hamza Sodagar to deliver his speech. Bar Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
وعجل فرجهم. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتجبين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين لتراب مقدمه الفداء، ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. For the hastening and the return of our Imam, let's recite a salawat. We express our condolences first and foremost to the Imam of our time, Imam al-Hujjah, the son of Zahra, on the occasion of the Shahadat of the greatest of all women, and for those who understand the greatest of all mankind, the Lady Fatima Zahra, salamullahi wa salawatuhu alayha, and also to all of you and all the lovers and the Shias and followers of the Ahlul Bayt. For this occasion, we express our condolences. Over the course of these 2 sessions, we plan on discussing the life of Fatima Zahra salamullah alayha, her performance, how she lived through what is arguably the greatest fitna in the context of Islam. And in order to understand that, first we need to understand what the fitna is. So tonight I'm going to discuss this fitna that occurred. The fitna of taking Islam off its tracks, the tracks that were set by Allah, implemented by Rasulullah, finalized and completed on the day of Ghadir in the most evident, clearest possible way to everyone that counted, to everyone that could have done otherwise, and also finalized after that through the measures that the Prophet took, including the last days of his life, knowing of this fitna that is brewing during the lifetime of the Prophet when he asked for a pen and paper. Okay. Let's start with this idea. Let's clarify this for whoever has not heard this. The Prophet asking for pen and paper. Let's clear up something that some people may have a misunderstanding on, which is, why would the Prophet, who is known to not know how to read or write, ask for a pen and paper? Well, that is a misunderstanding. The Quran never says the Prophet did not know how to read or write. The Quran says he was never taught. Okay? The Quran says he is ummi. Ummi means you have not been taught. You are the way you were in terms of people teaching you, the way your mother raised you, the way you were born. There was no education that the Prophet received. There were few. Arab society was very illiterate, but there were few. One account says there was about 11 people. This is a book that we read in the first year of the Hawza. It talks about the history of Islam. It talks a little bit about pre-Islamic era. In that book it says that historians say there were about 11 people amongst the Arabs, not the Jews and Christians. They were literate. The Arabs, the pagans, the mushrikeen, the polytheists. There was only 11 people that were literate, could read. The Prophet was never taught. That's what the Quran says. It says, وَمَا تَخُطُّهُ بِيَمِينِكَ. You did not write it. It doesn't say you didn't know how to write. It says you didn't write it. Okay, so that's what the Quran says. Then history tells us, after the move of the Prophet to Medina, the Prophet actually started writing without being taught. He didn't have to be taught to know how to read or write. He could read and write, not being taught by any human being. Allah gave him that. If Allah can teach, according to the Quran, very clearly to Dawood and Sulaiman how to speak the language of birds, understand birds, let alone other human beings, speak to them, speak to the hudhud, get information from the hudhud, knowing that language that he was raised with and the script to write and read and other languages is not even difficult in comparison. The Prophet knew. It was just that he wasn't made literate by any human teaching, and prior to the move to Medina, the records say he did not used to read and write, and the Quran explains that. I don't want to continue any further with that. The Prophet, who has been given the knowledge of reading and writing, literacy, asks for a pen and paper. And he says, I want to write something that is going to save you and will keep you on the right path. Okay? For those who say, why is this information not found in these words in the Quran? See what happens if there's an attempt to write them down in these words by someone who has spent 23 years with people, someone who is known to be a messenger of God, someone whose every word is respected as divinely guided, someone who in the context of Hudaybiyah, when he wants to show the mushrikeen what the believers believe in regard to this man, he makes wudu. The believers don't allow a drop of water, according to accounts, fall to the ground. They catch every drop of water because of the barakah in that. A man who's lived for 23 years like this, surrounded by the closest of his companions, some of them being his father-in-laws, is asking for a pen and paper. What happens in that session? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has an illness. God is taking the life of the Prophet through this illness that there were no names at the time for these different illnesses. We don't know a name for this. He was not killed by poison. He was not killed by any other way. It's an illness. And the way it was, the symptoms were toward the end, he was passing out, as we say. So he asked for a pen and paper, then he passed out. He was no longer speaking. That means, for someone like that, the body is not responding. He's going to be departing this body. The Prophet doesn't die. Nobody dies in that sense. Nobody. You've heard all the accounts. A person passes, they are there witnessing what people are doing to their body. The body is dying. What we see is the departure of the soul from the body. The soul is there. The Prophet, while he's in this life, has that ability. When we say he passes out, that means God has brought his body to a point where the body does not respond. So these people who seem to, as I said, they consider the Prophet to be such a character, but it seems like they only claim that. When push comes to shove, when it comes to serious matters that they dislike, they will oppose him. So the Prophet, seemingly to them, with their judgment, seeing the Prophet as just another man, that's honestly the reality of the matter. They thought the Prophet is just another man, maybe some angel that we can't see comes and whispers in his ear, and he says something that we don't know of. So to them, he's not here, he's passed out. So the person that later became the second Khalifa, this is mentioned. This is not the first time that he has the audacity to say something as insulting and hurtful as he does to the Prophet in this case. But it is one of the most insulting and one of the worst things that is said against the Prophet during the lifetime of the Prophet. He said, if somebody wanted to get up to go and fulfill the obligation, the Prophet asked for a pen and paper. He says, sit down. Inna ar-rajula layahjur la'natullah alayk. Allah curse you for saying such a thing. Well, he doesn't know what he's saying. He's ill. He doesn't know what he's saying. The Prophet came back again. And so now they're wondering, again, a lot of these people still don't know who this man is. Pen and paper is not there. The Prophet says, actually doesn't say anything. Others say, should we bring the pen and paper? The Prophet says, Aba'dama, after what was said. If this point is mentioned that the Prophet can yahjur, can say nonsense, whatever he writes right now is nonsense. It means nothing. There's no point in writing it anymore. Last moments of the Prophet, one of the people who was a father-in-law of the Prophet, who is one of those who joined the Prophet in Mecca before the move to Medina, someone who's seen by most Muslimin as being one of the top-ranking companions of the Prophet at the time. And he says this, then it's completely unstable to say or to write anything further. The Prophet said, after what was said, there's no point in writing. I don't need it. Okay. What does this tell us? We said we want to describe the fitna. The fitna is the following. There is a process in place, set in motion by Allah. The Prophet, Rasulullah, implements every part of this correctly, where governance, who rules over the Muslimin after the Prophet? Who ruled over the Muslimin? Rasulullah was a Rasul that did not only bring a book and say, here's the book, you do with it as you wish. No, he is Imamul Muslimin. He is leading the Muslimin. Leading the Muslimin not just in their personal lives, tahara, najasa, salat, hajj, saum, this, that, the other. No. International relations. Letters are written to the emperors of the big empires surrounding the Muslims, inviting their entire nation to Islam. Engaging in dialogue with different nations, different ideologies, different beliefs, and taking in the Christians, for example, as citizens of this new Islamic country, this new Muslim country under Islamic rule. The Prophet has a military, the Prophet has rules that people need to abide by in order to be citizens of this country. How all that works, it's all in the Quran. This is the constitution of it. That's the rule. Rasulullah is not just an advisor, advising people in their private lives. He is a ruler that rules the Muslimin based on Islam. According to the Quran, this was supposed to continue. And the way it was supposed to continue is how, or through the Prophet telling the people who the next ruler that will continue exactly the way Rasulullah did was going to be. And that was announced on a public scale of thousands of people. The numbers differ about how many thousand there were. Ghadir, 18th of Dhul Hajjah, which is roughly around 2 months before the demise of the Prophet. The Prophet announced it in that gathering very openly, clearly. People outside of Medina heard this. News got out. The motion was set for that. The bay'ah was received from the people for that to continue. It's set in motion. That's the direction. That's what this is moving toward. A plot begins to form during the lifetime of the Prophet, before even Ghadir, to try to change the trajectory, to try to change this motion, to try to change the direction. Not because of Islam, not because of what they thought is best for Islam, not because any of that, but because they didn't like Ali to rule, and they wanted themselves to rule. They wanted a piece of this. There's a number of things that were done during the lifetime of the Prophet to make sure that they are able to pull this off. And a number of things are done after the demise of the Prophet to make sure this happens. Before I get to what was done during the lifetime of the Prophet, very briefly, and then what was done after the demise of the Prophet, I need to say that this motion that was set, or the counter motion, what was done by those who hijacked Khilafah, which was not a term, it's just a literal word. It means the imam that succeeds, but they turned it into a whole system and process, and it's become this idol, Khilafah. These people were not on a level with the general Muslim populace to be able to pull this off by themselves. Okay. It isn't the case that you have a few people that are very influential with the Muslims in the context of Islam that change the direction of the Muslims. This isn't the case. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman wasn't even part of this equation. That's why you have a shura after Umar, because he didn't have the third person that was part of that. There were 3 people that made that plot. None of them are big shots. They weren't big shots prior to Islam. They didn't have a an image with the Arabs before Islam, and they didn't have a type of personality, image, and perception in the minds of the Muslims post-Islam that would allow them to do something like this on their own, had it not been for the measures taken, not knowing if it's going to actually work or not. This is very important, right? What I'm trying to set up for us is for us to understand there's a motion in place by the Prophet that if you let things be, or you have something small occur, get in the way of it, the motion is set. This is going to move forward. Ali will be the ruler. This is how things are. The Prophet is not an incapable person. He's flipped the Arab culture upside down, or right side up, one should say. It was upside down before the Prophet. He flipped it back right. He made it right. Okay. He changed the culture of the people over the course of 23 years. That's huge. 23 years is not a lot of time. From them, for them to go from worshiping and sacrificing their own children for stone and wood, to where they didn't necessarily participate, but they allowed for all these idols to be broken and come and worship the one God that this one man says. It's huge. The Prophet accomplished a lot. He changed a lot. He was not an incapable person. What he did in Ghadir with divine guidance, everything is set in motion. That on one hand. Second, the people who carried out this fitna are not these people that had a lot of pull that the Prophet trusted and told everybody to listen to, and then now when this time comes, they switch sides, they go to the other side, and all this happens. No, they are people that don't have that type of pull. If it was even someone like Abu Sufyan, you could argue, well, Abu Sufyan, prior to the conquest of Mecca, was a big shot amongst Arabs. That's about 4 years before this, if I remember correctly, 4 or 2 years. It's either 6th Hijri or 8th Hijri, the fall of Mecca. I forget that detail. Either way, 2 years or 4 years ago. Worst case scenario, it's been 4 years. Okay. 4 years ago, Abu Sufyan was a big shot. If he would have pulled this off, we could say, okay, only 4 years ago he was removed from that position. He still had a lot of clout with people. They listened to him and so on. He's not part of this. In fact, he listened to the Prophet and he went on this expedition or this trip, whatever, outside of Medina to collect zakat or whatever. That's one of the things, one of the measures that the Prophet took. Again, if we were to just talk about the measures that the Prophet took in order to make sure this motion that is set is not diverted. Abu Sufyan did that. Abu Sufyan came later and he saw, oh, this is unexpected. This is what he thought. You know what he said when he came along? He said, oh, Ali, if you stand and you fight them, I will support you. Ali said, I don't need your support. Okay. So he wasn't there. He didn't do any of this. He's not part of that. Abu Bakr, Umar, where are they before Islam? Nowhere. The two major clans of Quraysh that have clout with people are either Banu Umayyah or Banu Hashim. They're not in either. They're from Quraysh, but there's some unknown clans in Quraysh. They don't have any clout with people, no respect, nothing. During the time of the Prophet, during Islam, did they receive any special treatment from the Prophet? No, everybody watched them. There was nothing special about them. In war, they didn't show anything special. They were given opportunities. They obviously failed at these opportunities. There's nothing about that. The Quran made it very clear. If you're even the wife of the Prophet, let alone the father-in-law of the Prophet, the surah in the Quran, Surah At-Tahrim, that God talks about the two wives that include the two daughters of these two men, those verses, that chapter makes it clear that even if you're a wife of the Prophet, you're nobody unless you obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that chapter is testimony of God in the Quran that those two wives of the Prophet disobeyed Allah and the Rasulullah. Okay? Nope. In Islam, they don't have any special. They're just amongst the Muslimin, and they're not some of the best either. Ali, on the other hand, was someone that was respected by the Prophet. in ways that were very evident, very obvious before Ghadir. And that's why one of the measures we'll talk about very briefly that were taken during the lifetime of the Prophet was before Ghadir even took place, because they knew this is brewing and the Prophet will make this announcement. We have to try to stop it. Okay. Ali was someone known to be these characters. They didn't have any special respect amongst Muslims at the time. When they started this process, it's not like, oh my God, thank God, these guys came along. No. This notion that there was democratic, people came and voted. No. There were no free elections. The free elections were at Ghadir. Rasulullah said, this is what God says. If you believe in God and you believe I'm His messenger, أَلَسْتُ أَوْلَى بِكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُم? If you believe in that, God says go and do bay'ah with Him. There was no swords, no, they're coming back from Hajj. They said, we believe in Allah, we believe in you, we're going to willingly go. Bakhan, these same individuals who knew what they were planning, bakhan laka ya Ali, congratulations. That's free election. People were given the opportunity to put out their thoughts and show if they agree with this or not. There's only a couple of people, one person I know, the accounts say in Ghadir, this person got upset and said, Ya Muhammad, he didn't refer to the Prophet as Rasulullah. He said, is this from you or is it from God? If it's from God, tell him to send a stone right now, split me in half, I can't take this. According to the account, I wasn't there, I don't know, I'm telling you what history books say. And sure enough, that happened. This is the only person I know in Ghadir did not pledge allegiance. He said, I don't want this. And all these characters, they went forth along with everyone else. People didn't go forward saying, oh, we know these guys, these are better rulers. All those were made up afterwards. In that, show me any evidence that these characters were known to be people that were respected by the general Muslim populace. They were respected for their wisdom, for their leadership, for their bravery, for what? There's nothing there. Ali, on the other hand, was respected because of what the Prophet said about him. And people saw, even people who had issues with him because some of their relatives were killed by him, they saw his greatness. You couldn't miss that. Because he was young. It was too much for them. They couldn't handle that. But in terms of people seeing, they see greatness here, there's nothing special there. So these characters are not some special people in the eyes of the Arabs pre-Islam. They're nothing special in the eyes of Arabs post-Islam. Islam didn't make them special. Pre-Islamic times they weren't special. It's important to know. A fitna is a very difficult test that you don't see coming. Allah makes it happen. Let me tell you this. It says when the Prophet passed, Amirul Mu'mineen salamullah wa salawatuhu alayhima wa alihima, the Prophet and Amirul Mu'mineen. Amirul Mu'mineen was busy according to the obligations. The Prophet told him, you need to take care of the burial, which included the ceremony of the salat on the Prophet. Muslimin had to come group after group. According to the accounts, historic accounts, it took 3 days before the Prophet was actually buried. After 3 days of people performing their prayers, because the kafan, the washing and the kafan doesn't take too long. But the prayer of people, they came in different batches until all these Muslimin came and did. The account says 3 days it took. The Prophet, the Amir al-Mu'mineen is leveling out the grave of the Prophet. This account said, I heard this from Ayatollah Misbah, telling this account. And I think I read it too, I found it in a book. Amir al-Mu'mineen is leveling out the grave. They came to him and said, Ali, this is what's happening. Saqifah to Bani Sa'ida, this guy said that guy said that, this thing is happening. And Amir al-Mu'mineen, after a little while continuing his thing, then he put the shovel in the ground and straightened his back and he read the verses from Surah Al-Ankabut. Ahasib al-Nas, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alif Lam Mim, if I get the words right, that the first 3 letters, I think it's Alif Lam Mim. But anyhow, afterwards it says, Ahasib al-Nas, أن يتركوا أن يقولوا آمنا وهم لا يفتنون. Do people think that they will be left when they say we believe and they're not going to go through fitan, through difficult tests? وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ, the verses continue. We've tested people before them. The Jews were tested. The Christians were tested. All nations are tested. You say you believe, okay, that's a first test. You chose faith over disbelief. But there's more to it. There's a next step. There's another verse in the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, مَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَذَرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عَلَى مَا كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ حَتَّى يَمِيزَ الْخَبِيثَ مِنَ الطَّيِّبِ. This has been the way God deals with the mu'mineen. He doesn't leave them alone. Until what? Until He separates from the mu'mineen, not from the kuffar. It doesn't say from the kuffar and the Muslim. It doesn't say from human beings. مَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَذَرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عَلَى مَا كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ. He's not going to let the mu'mineen, you and I, this applies, there's a lot for us to learn. This is what God says. You think you believe and you're going to be left alone? No, He says He's going to not leave you alone until from the ranks of the believers He separates khabitha min at-tayyib. There's khabith amongst us, there's tayyib amongst us. There's good and bad. Those people that carried out the fitna after the demise of the Prophet, the leaders of it, I'm not even talking about, we'll talk about that. But the people who allowed for this fitna to translate to stopping the motion set by the Prophet, diverting it to a whole different thing. All those who were involved in that, who knew what is happening, and did not do what Amirul Mu'mineen did not do what he said, did not do what Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha did and said, did not join the few that were with them, the 4 or 5 men. Of the men, there's only 4 or 5. Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha was not supposed to be out in a battlefield with anyone. She did things, we're going to talk about that tomorrow. But in terms of the men, there's only Salman, Miqdad, Abu Dhar, maybe Ammar. Some accounts, I'm not too sure. I don't want to say anything. I'm not sure. It's me doubting right now. I remember accounts that did not include him, but I can't say I'm fully convinced that those accounts are reliable accounts. So anyway, 4 or 5 people. Those who did not join these 4 or 5 people, they are part of making this fitna occur. This is why it's very important for us to understand. It isn't like the whole Muslim population disbelieved in the Prophet. They just said we believe, and then they're just waiting for the Prophet to pass, say, okay, whatever, let's go on with what we want. Well, if they wanted to do that, they wouldn't have even joined him during his lifetime. That's not the case. That's not accurate. They did believe in him. They had iman, but a difficult test came their way. It's a fitna. If you have people that have that clout and they want to steal the crowd, they just played along until the Prophet has passed, and then they steal the crowd from the person that the Prophet appointed, and people did not know that person, they didn't care for that person. Okay, that can make sense. It's not very difficult, all right? And then you would just say, well, you should have listened to the Prophet even if you didn't know the person. But that's not the case. We would have to have sessions here discussing how the notion that the Muslimin did not know Ali or did not respect Ali, did not consider him to be qualified for leadership, are all false notions. That's not the case. Ali had proven himself in the battlefield. Ali had proven himself as the representative of the Prophet in his absence. Ali had proven himself in so many different areas. The Prophet showed that in Yemen, On coming to Hajjatul Wada, Amir al-Mu'mineen was sent to Yemen. That's a whole chapter of history that needs to be discussed. Ali is known. Not some unknown figure that's just the cousin of the Prophet, the son-in-law of the Prophet, someone who just knows the sword. No. All around, people know this man is different. Okay. So you have a motion in place. You have Muslimin who believe in the Prophet. They know that this is the motion. Then you have a few nobodies that are leading, and we see these nobodies become those rulers after the demise of the Prophet. What happens? Why? Why does this happen? Okay. So here's, in a nutshell, this starting point should have been the end of the first lecture, and then a second one just talking about the different players and so on and so forth. But we have to summarize everything in 2 sessions. We said measures were taken by these 2 characters because they are the ones that we see took that from Amir al-Mu'mineen, took the Ummah away from Amir al-Mu'mineen. They spearheaded the movement away from the direction that Allah set for the Muslimin after the demise of the Prophet. Okay. But they're not the only players. We'll talk about what they did. They're not the only players. We have to understand a couple other elements for us to understand, or begin to understand, allow ourselves. These are some leads to allow us to understand why things happened the way they did. If these were the believers, they believed in the Prophet made it clear, then why did they all of a sudden, over the course of a couple of days, just change everything and forget everything? It's just shocking. It's what some people say against us. They're like, no, you guys made it all up. It just doesn't make sense. Muslimin believed in the Prophet. As soon as he passed, you're saying they did this? That just doesn't make sense. No, that is exactly what happened. They did believe in the Prophet. We don't deny that at all. The majority of people actually believed in the Prophet, but this happened nevertheless. Well, why? How does that make sense? I'll start with, I mentioned I'm going to talk about some of the measures taken by the opposition, these few people. There's 3 individuals, it's only 3 individuals that started this before in Mecca, according to every account that we have, all the accounts that we have. It's only 3 individuals that actually planned on something that we read, of course, in history, because there are some signs, there are some clues that it wasn't only these 3 individuals that were thinking this, but they were nevertheless the ones that pulled it off. Okay. I said I was going to talk about some things. They said things, they made a pact in Mecca by Masjid al-Haram, which is interesting. I don't know if it was their pagan side that they did it by Masjid al-Haram. Why? If you don't believe in this, why Masjid al-Haram? Well, what's the deal with that? Make it outside of Masjid al-Haram. Go in the desert and make a pact. Why by the Kaaba? Okay. Anyway, they made a pact in Mecca. It says by Masjid or in Masjid al-Haram, by the Kaaba. They formed an alliance between the 3 of them, and they swore to work on this together. And they took measures. Before Ghadir, they planned on certain things. After Ghadir, they planned to kill the Prophet. Then the one thing before that incident, I already give you the account of, the last day of, or days of the Prophet's life, the pen and paper. The story of, you've all heard, one of the measures that the Prophet took was, there was a need for Muslim troops to go up north and deal with the Roman threat. There had been a few battles up there. There was a need for them to go again. The son of Zayd was appointed as the commander of that, pretty much all believers, the major portion of the believers, to go up north and fight. Included in that were these 2 individuals, in fact, all 3 of them, not just the 2, but the two are important because the third passed before he got a piece of that in this world. And he only got the hellfire for it in the hereafter. He didn't get any of the pie here. He didn't get any of the governance here. All three of them should have been on that. They stayed, they made sure their stay in Medina is not known to the Prophet until the time came. It is Aisha that reveals that her father is in town. Not that the Prophet doesn't know, but the Prophet is not supposed to reveal what he knows necessarily. Okay. He was ill, Ali was in town, he was supposed to go, he would lead the prayers in the masjid. Fajr time comes, he's not feeling well enough to stand up and go and lead the prayers. And Aisha is there. He says to her, send for Ali to lead the prayers. She said, I will send for my father. Oh, your father's in town. He was not supposed to be in town. You're supposed to be out of town. They made the Prophet Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi that is ill. The reason why he sent for Ali is because he has trouble standing. He forced himself to shut down this measure by these people who are causing the fitna down. He goes to the masjid himself to make sure none other than himself or Ali leads prayer as long as he can do anything with it. As long as he can stop it, as long as he's alive and capable. He pushed himself to his limits and went to the masjid himself, made sure no one else leads prayer, to then make it sound like the Prophet sent him to lead prayers. That's what would have been said. The measures taken before the demise of the Prophet, I will leave because of time. What is done after the demise of the Prophet, I will start with an account and try to expound upon this and try to understand it. We said there's three people, including Abu Bakr and Umar, who decided to move away from this divine instruction. And they said they're going to help each other do that. But when we read the accounts after the demise of the Prophet, people who were not part of that, who had nothing to do with that, who did not believe in that, are the ones who set up what we have all heard. You've all heard of Saqifah Bani Sa'idah. Okay. Everyone has heard, oh, Saqifah, or what is Saqifah? Who set up Saqifah? Did Abu Bakr set up Saqifah? No. Did Umar set up Saqifah? No. Did the third person set up Saqifah? No. Who set up Saqifah? The Ansar did. Aus and Khazraj did. The ones who welcomed the Prophet to their city did. The ones that in the battle of Badr, when God said, speak to the people and see what they want to do. And these two individuals said, we are not prepared for battle, let's go back to Medina. The people of Aus and Khazraj, the Ansar, stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, because they were the majority. So, Ya Rasulullah, we believe you were addressing us for us to share our opinion. We told you, we pledged bay'ah with you, your life before ours, your word before ours. Whatever you decide, we will do. The champions of Badr, under the leadership of the Prophet and then Amirul Mu'mineen, are the Ansar. The ones who split their belongings, their wealth. The Prophet paired Muslimin up, Muhajir and Ansar. And somebody that you never knew, say somebody moved from a completely different city, you have no idea who this guy is. Suddenly Rasulullah said, you and him are brothers, you got to split your wealth with this person. Are you willing to do that? How much faith do you have in Rasulullah? These people split their wealth with that individual. The Quran praises them. These people set up Saqifah Bani Sa'idah. Okay. What did they set it up for though? What happened? Saqifah Bani Sa'idah is one of their traditional places of gathering. They gather to discuss an important matter for them. What is the matter? The matter is what are we gonna do about governance post Rasulullah? But Rasulullah already decided what that was going to be. Why are you having this conversation? Why is this a conversation amongst you? Didn't you believe in Rasulullah? Didn't you put your lives down on the line for him? What is this conversation? If anybody thinks that they suddenly left Islam, they suddenly disbelieved in the Prophet, that's not accurate. I'll tell you signs for that. I'll tell you reasons for that, clues for that. Of the two chiefs of Ansar, Aus and Khazraj, there's two Sa'd, Sa'd ibn Ubadah and Sa'd ibn Mu'adh. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh already passed during the lifetime of the Prophet. Sa'd ibn Ubadah is the one who's alive. Sa'd ibn Ubadah is there in Saqifah Bani Sa'idah. Sa'd ibn Ubadah never pledged allegiance to Abu Bakr. Never. And he was killed on the way to Sham, and they said a jinn killed him. They threw an arrow, they put a note on it, jinn has killed him. It's like Western Jewish media before Western Jewish times. Okay. Videos on social media. It's these guys who are doing it to us. It's clear what happened. Sa'd ibn Ubadah never pledged allegiance. Many of the Ansar, including the son of Sa'd ibn Ubadah, Qais ibn Sa'd ibn Ubadah, his name is Qais. He remained loyal to Ali. He realized the mistake they made, and they were on Ali's side, but it was already too late. Okay. So these are a couple, because of the shortage of time, again, I'm trying to run through things. It's clear for anyone who reads the history, it is not because they suddenly disbelieved. Here's the problem, brothers and sisters. When we see these big blunders in history made by people who are not disbelievers, you look and you see that the reason for it is disbelief, but not the disbelief that you and I talk about. Disbelief you and I talk about is, oh, this guy never believed in anything. No. Mu'mineen have different levels of iman. That's what the verse said. حَتَّى يَمِيزَ الْخَبِيثَ مِنَ الطَّيِّبِ. God wants to distinguish and separate between khabith and tayyib from the mu'mineen, because iman has different ranks. There's different degrees of iman. There's different levels of iman. Every level of iman has an equivalent level of kufr. If you have that level of iman, then you don't have kufr. On a higher level, you may not have iman. You may have kufr on a higher level. You didn't realize what happened here. Why did some of the best believers, praised by Rasulullah, praised by Allah, why did they set up Saqifah Bani Sa'idah that became a platform that ended up being the first platform of the Pledge of Allegiance against Rasulullah in favor of Abu Bakr? This platform was created by the Ansar, not by those three individuals. They were not even part of this. They weren't even part of this. Why did they set it up then? If they believed they made a mistake, if they knew of Ghadir, if they believed in Rasulullah, why did they do this? Does it make sense? You believe me, you believe in him. He said Ali, and now you're talking about who? And you're not even saying Ali. Like the whole conversation, go to any book you can find. I've read this back and forth, I don't know how many times, and I'm just scratching my head. I don't see anywhere in this conversation in Saqifah Bani Sa'idah, but we did this in Ghadir. There's no part of that says, but Ali, the Prophet said Ali. None of it. From the beginning to the end. The clues outside of that particular session tell us that they knew of it. Qais is someone during the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, is a strong supporter of Amir al-Mu'mineen, one of the people that testifies about Ghadir. They knew it. But in the session, there's no conversation. Nothing about that. What is the conversation? This starts giving us a clue. Why? We have to analyze. What is the conversation? The conversation is the following. They said, we have to do something in order that Amara, Khilafah, governance does not leave us. And then they start discussing, they say, but no one's going to accept us as rulers. What's the answer to that? One of them said, if they don't agree, then they will have a ruler, we will have a ruler. We'll split it up. Okay. What does this tell you? What it tells us is that there are rumors, there's talk. People have an issue with Ali being the ruler. Something's going to happen. People are going to do things. Okay. People have issues with that. The believers got scared. They got material. They forgot about their iman. It became a race for power. They left iman in that moment. This happens to us. We know everything about Islam and Quran. God forbid a situation arises where there's a material race. We forget about the whole thing. Jump on it. Get my piece. And then when it turns into a rat race like that, it gets real ugly. Real fast. That's exactly what happened. If we allow the residue of kufr, if we don't remind ourselves of iman, whatever Rasulullah said, then when the less strong believers, the weaker believers, the weaker people amongst us that the Quran constantly speaks of, that amongst you are people who have the illness in their heart, they're not strong believers. How many verses of the Quran talk about that? In this battle, in that battle, after all the battles, it's all talking about, there's a whole chapter of munafiqun as well. People amongst you in your ranks that are not really believers. God says, I won't tell you what their faces are like, what the description of their faces. I will tell you how you can identify a quality of a munafiq. So there's munafiqin amongst you. When the munafiqin and the people that have weak faith, when they start whispering the wrong stuff, the people that seem to be stronger believers, where are you and I? You're strong believers. I'm not even one of the strong believers. What do we do? This is what they did. They assumed Ali is going to end up without governance. They assumed that the way the people are moving, Ali will not be the ruler. Okay? With that assumption, let's figure out what part of this we're going to have. That's their conversation. That's their conversation. We don't want to lose this. The Ansar in Medina, Yathrib was an unknown. Medina is a name post-Islam. It's called Yathrib. Yathrib was, nobody knew where the heck Yathrib is. Okay. Where's Yathrib? Nobody's. Aus, Khazraj, who cares? What? Never heard of you. Who is this? Quraysh was known. Amongst Arabs, Quraysh were the rulers. Their tribal system, Quraysh were the rulers. These guys are not Quraysh. They are not even the ones that had any type of good relations with Quraysh. Nobody's. Absolute nobodies. Like, we're going to lose it all. They've enjoyed respect because of Islam, because of the Quran. Now you're afraid of losing. Recite salawat. Afraid of losing what Allah gave you, and you're going against what God said to you and gave to you. This is what happens. A major part of Muslims moving away from Amir al-Mu'mineen has to do with Saqifah Bani Sa'idah, and that was set up with this mindset. Okay. A couple other measures that were taken, that itself could have just died out. The reason why I try to spend a little bit more time explaining that is to tell us that from these conversations we understand that influential people in Medina realize that influential people in Medina are not happy with the decision of Ali being the ruler. So there is talk of what we're going to do. They set something up to decide what they're going to do, assuming Ali is not going to become. So realize from that, there's other people. We may not figure out who all, but there's other people that are involved. It's not just the three and Aus and Khazraj. People's thoughts are, their headspace is here. This is what they're thinking. The general populace with the influential figures in Medina, Muslims, they're not going to be okay with this. Ali is not an unknown person, but there's a whole bunch of other people as well. They're not okay with this. All right. What happens? This isn't the only measure. That session is set up in order to avoid losing all of Khilafah. Look, take lesson from this. Learn from this. They ended up becoming the platform that took away governance from themselves. Jealousy got involved between the two tribes. It became tribal. All the ugly stuff starts coming up real quick. Someone from the other tribe is Aus and Khazraj. Sa'd ibn Ubadah is the only chief available. The other tribe is like, I'm not going to let that head of tribe become the Khalifa. He starts saying things, they kick him out of the session. He goes and starts telling people, this is what's happening. Umar and Abu Bakr and the third person hear that. They rush over there. Conversation back and forth. They support one another. They've already talked this out beforehand. These guys don't know. The outcome of that session is they trample over Sa'd ibn Ubadah, who is not willing to do his allegiance. They pledge allegiance to Abu Bakr. This is not a fair election. It's not even an election for all people. It's just Aus and Khazraj, only a few people from amongst them. It's not all of Aus and Khazraj either. Things are not done. The motion is still in effect. Amir al-Mu'mineen is still the ruler. They did that. It's not over though. Everything that you've heard about going to the door of Ali and breaking down the door, taking away Fadak, all that happens after this, not before it. It's not over. It's not over. What do? A few things. One, because they did not enjoy respect and influence to a degree that they could get the population to follow them, they struck a deal with one of the thuggish tribes that had superficially accepted Islam, but they were not strong mu'mineen. There were a number of these tribes. They just went with the flow. When everybody started becoming Muslim, realized, oh, that's where we should be headed, they joined Islam as well. They didn't really believe. They were around Medina, they came to town, they told them, look, you help us out, we'll give you a little something. They are the people that participated in burning the door. It wasn't only Umar himself, there was a number of people with them. And they didn't only go there. They, accounts say, that they went around Medina pushing people to the masjid to pledge allegiance with Abu Bakr. Is this fair election? Is it people deciding on their own? They're being pushed by thugs to go to the masjid and pledge allegiance. Again, you're thinking, but the people know what the Prophet said. Look at the mindset of people, and now they're confused. Rasulullah is not with them. In their minds, Ali is one of the parties in this dispute. It becomes a dispute in their minds. It's not a dispute. It's clear what God said, but people get confused. When you get confused, what are you supposed to do? Go back to the knowledge you have. Go back to the revelation you have. Check what you know. Go back to it. Okay, this is going on. These guys said this, that guy said that, these guys. What did Rasulullah say? What did the Quran say? If you just think, remember, you know what to do. Problem is, we don't. We don't. It's not just back then. Now too, many of the world problems that involve the Muslimin and involve the followers of the Ahlul Bayt. What is our decision-making process as believers? Does it involve, wait a second, okay, this guy said this, that guy said, what did God say? Is that part of it? Is identifying what God said part of that? Is looking at what Rasulullah said and did part of that? Is looking at what Amir al-Mu'mineen said part of that? No. You know what's part of it? Different parties involved saying Ali said this, or the Prophet said this, or the Quran said that. And people are just hearing this from this person and that person. Is this individual who's hearing these things, is he referring to the Quran? Is he referring to the sayings? Is he going back to what he's clear Allah and Rasulullah have said? That's not part of the process. Amir al-Mu'mineen, when he describes fitna, this is in Nahj al-Balagha and it's found in Al-Kafi as well. Wording is slightly different, but the message is pretty much the same. One of the things that he says happens in the context of fitna is this: أحكام تبتدع. Ahkam are fabricated. Ahadith are fabricated. When they took Fadak away from Zahra, salamullahi alayha, they kicked out her people that were working on her land. They kicked out her people that were working on her land. Everyone knew what this land was. Rasulullah gave it to her. It was not even inheritance. But they took that from her, and then they started fabricating reasons, creating reasons, attributing, oh, we heard the Prophet say this. The last thing they said, because initially that was her land. It wasn't even inheritance. It was hers during the lifetime of the Prophet. They said, prove it. That's not how it works in Islam. If you're already working, if you have the keys to a house, they can't come and take it from you and say, prove that this is yours. You have the keys, it's yours. Anyone says otherwise needs to prove it. That's the rule, not just in Islam, everywhere. But in Islam, that's the rule. It's called Qa'idatul Yad. But Fatima to Zahra even had witnesses that Rasulullah gave it to. They rejected and refused to accept the witnesses against what Allah says. People, you're witnessing this. This guy says, I'm Khalifa to Rasulullah. You're pledging allegiance to this person. He's attributing things that are not said by Rasulullah to him. He's going against what Rasulullah said. Did you go back to the clarity you had? Did you go back to the Quran yourself? Or are you just hearing, oh, Ali said Rasulullah gave it to her? They're saying, no, we're not convinced because you need 2 men or 1 man and 2 women. Because the witnesses that Fatima to Zahra, according to the accounts, brought was Ali ibn Abi Talib and 1 woman. They said it's got to be a man and 2 women. Okay. A lie that a lot of us think is true, unfortunately. Think, oh, in certain matters there has to be either 2 men or a man and 2 women. No, that's not true. Ahkamun tubtada. Are the people going back and checking what is being said? Is it important to see what God said, what Rasulullah said, what Ali ibn Abi Talib said, what Imam al-Hussein said? Checking, do I know those things that I think they said are actually said by them? Am I doing that or no? I'm just looking at the scene and this guy said this, that guy said that. Confusion upon confusion upon confusion, which is essentially what fitna is. Amir al-Mu'mineen describing fitna in that account says, لو كان الباطل خلص لم يخف على ذي حجة. If it was only batil that was presented by leaders of fitna, you wouldn't fear anyone with a head on their shoulders. You don't have to be strong. It's lies, a bunch of lies, nothing but lies. Okay, it's easy to tell. This guy's telling the truth, this guy's lying. ولكن يؤخذ من هذا ذغث ومن هذا ذغث فيمزجان. They take haqq, a little bit of haqq and a little bit of batil, they mix it up. What they tell you is not entirely batil and it's not entirely haqq. It gets confusing. What's the solution? Go back to clarity. The clarity you have is the Quran that's before you. The clarity you have, all of you have been with the Prophet, you've heard things. Now they're saying they heard things you never heard. Like, wait a second, that's not. Speak up the clarity that you have. Go back to the clarity that you have. No, they didn't. It becomes a dispute. This person said this, Fatima to Zahra said this, Ali said this, they said the other. This other person said a third thing. Fourth person said a fourth thing. The reasons why Fadak were taken, I don't want to get into that right now. There are motives why Fadak is taken. There are motives that they have to take Fadak. There's motives to go to the door of Ali and force him to go. Not one occasion. They went multiple occasions. These are all important details of this history for you and I, for numerous reasons. But they went multiple occasions. Ali refused to go. But in the end, after no one supported, Ali allowed himself to be taken. Because if Ali did not want to go, no one on earth could have made him go. There are cases that Ali did that. Ali said, no, I'm not going to do this. The third Khalifa wanted Ali to pray full when his prayer should have been qasr. For some odd reason he liked it. According to the accounts, it just doesn't make sense to me. I have no idea why he insisted on praying full while you're traveling. But that was the case. And he wanted Ali to lead prayers full. He said, there's no way on earth I'm going to do that. You want to do something wrong, that's your deal. You can't make me do anything wrong. No one was going to force him to. Ali allowed himself after a few attempts, after the breaking of the door, the breaking of the ribs of the daughter of the Prophet. Eventually, Ali allowed himself. They tied him up and they took him to the masjid. They raised his hand. He kept it as a fist. He didn't even open it. He didn't allow them to open it. He kept it there. He didn't move his hand. They took his hand, took their hand. Abu Bakr took his hand and touched Ali's hand. Ali didn't even move his hand. This is how he held it according to the account. And they said, okay, we're done. And that was the end of it. And Ali after that never disputed their rule again. All of these measures that were taken, the taking of Fadak, there's motives behind it, the lies that were said in them, there's a lot of details there, there's a lot of things to learn there. Coming to take Ali, to get him to pledge allegiance, the way he ended up allowing for it to happen, because that is referred to in our accounts as such, okay? Allowing that to happen. But them insisting on it, and Ali at what point allowed that to happen? On their end, causing this fitna. Why did they insist on this? There's a lot of these details. The summary that I want to present with some of these details that I mentioned is, as Amir al-Mu'mineen said, the believers get confused because of the measures taken by people who do not have either proper faith, they are what the Quran refers to as في قلوبهم مرض, or the munafiqeen. These two groups of people within the circle of mu'mineen, within the gatherings of mu'mineen. Though the measures that those people take collectively, because these different groups of people are not the same, collectively, what they take, what they do, causes confusion in the minds of the believers about their direction. Sure, if these measures were not taken, did anyone have doubt what the Prophet said about after himself? What the role of Ali is? No, it's very clear. Did these people have this special relationship with people, they had a clout with people? No. These different measures were taken by these munafiqeen that I mentioned. Some of the things that are said and done by الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٍ, a context is created, a platform, for want of a better word, is created for a fitna, which means things are not clear as to what we should do. The things that we knew that should have given us clarity, we forgot. Now we're looking like, what do I do now? What am I supposed to do? Ali goes and speaks, for example. We'll talk about what Fatima to Zahra does. Amir al-Mu'mineen goes and speaks in the masjid. He talks to them about Ghadir. He talks to them about what should have happened. He talks to them about the wrong. And then he says this. He says, if I had the number of people that we had in Badr, I would not allow them to do this. That shows things were not solidified yet, that wrong direction, the motion that the Prophet had set was still in action if the decisions were made properly. Amir al-Mu'mineen speaks to the people. People are moved. They recognize what he said. Instead of 313, which is the number, 360 or 70 people came right after that lecture. But Ali said, not now, tomorrow. He didn't want an emotional decision. Okay? They went back home. Again, the confusion. This guy says this, that guy says this. I don't know what to do. It's not like they were sitting there like, we hate Ali. We don't want to go because we hate Ali. No, I told you some of them became some of the most loyal people to Amir al-Mu'mineen. Very loyal to them. At that time too, they had a lot of respect for him. They didn't hate Ali, at least. The reason was they're confused. They didn't come because they're not sure what to do. That's all that needs to happen. If you're confused, you don't need to do the wrong thing. When you're confused, you will not do the right thing. And the bad people will do the wrong thing. Net outcome, wrong prevails. In that particular context, this is what happened. The majority of people at the time of that fitna got confused. They did not take sides when they were supposed to take the right side. And all the measures taken by the wrong side eventually led to the solidification of this hijacking of the Khilafah of Rasulullah. And I'll end with this again. Brothers, sisters, before fitna arises, and fitna is God's sunnah. God says, مَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيَذَرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ عَلَى مَا كَانُوا عَلَيْهِ. You think you're good, you're doing your poetry, we're doing our sessions, we're crying for the Ahlul Bayt. That's all good, but we think we're not going to be tested. We're not going to be put in a situation where we need to choose between Ali and someone else, and we think it's going to be easy. No, it's going to be difficult. And we will be confused. Prepare for that. How? There's a couple of things. One that is my emphasis, and I'll say a few words regarding, is clarity. Look, get your Islam clear. Find more information. Islam and our understanding of Islam is not something that you can have a crash course over the course of a week and you're good. It's a lifelong process of reading the Quran for understanding, looking at history for understanding, asking questions for understanding, finding real answers and being able to find the fallacies and the answers that we already have adopted or we hear from people, to get stronger and stronger and have more and more clarity. So when a situation like that arises, we have full clarity to stand and state the truth and stand with the truth, because it's going to be an obligation to state the truth as well. Some people, we didn't talk about all motives. I get to the second motive as well. Second thing we need to prepare. Sometimes it's a combination of that confusion and another thing. Work on your understanding of Islam. Brothers, sisters, what does Tawheed mean? They will come and fool us in the name of Tawheed. They will cause us to go towards shirk. In the name of tawassul, they wouldn't push us against tawassul. In the name of the Ahlul Bayt, they will push us against the Ahlul Bayt. Because they took the name of the Prophet and Islam and they used it against the Prophet and Islam in this fitna. They took Fadak and they said, we heard the Prophet say this. They used the Prophet's name to oppress the daughter of the Prophet. They used the Quran to do that. Misinterpretations, misrepresentations, misinformation. We need to get our clarity. We need to have more and more clarity. And it's a lifelong story. You got to keep going. There's never an end to it. And it's just something that we have got to spend time on. I could sit down and whatever lecture, by the end of it, whatever I heard and moved me and all that's great, but that information is not going to stick. I have to process that if that's a way that I'm going to be learning. And that's not going to be enough. I got to go check it. What if this guy is saying a whole bunch of mumbo jumbo? What if all I told you was a bunch of baloney? You have to go and verify whatever you hear. Go look, whatever means you have. Check. Just because I'm wearing a turban doesn't mean anything. Those guys had the biggest turbans back then. Go check things, check, verify. Get clarity before a situation where arises where one amama is against another amama. Get clarity. And the other thing, Amir al-Mu'mineen says it in his khutbah. He says, when he says they mix haqq and batil, فَيُمْزَجَان, and then he says, فَهُنَالِكَ اسْتَحْوَضَ الشَّيْطَانُ عَلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِ وَالنَّجَى الَّذِينَ سَبَقَتْ لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ الْحُسْنَى. Who will prevail? Who will get out of this fitna? Not prevail in the sense of, oh, the ummah went in the right direction. No. In that fitna, besides the leaders of haqq, which is Ali and Fatima, salamullahi alayhima, there are a few. There's Salman, there's Abu Dhar, there's Miqdad, maybe Ammar, maybe one or two other people. Okay. These are the people that prevailed. These are the people that naja. These are the people that were rescued by Allah. They were saved from that fitna. They remained on the right path. Why did they remain on the path? This hadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, هُنَالِكَ اسْتَحْوَضَ الشَّيْطَانُ عَلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِ وَالنَّجَى الَّذِينَ سَبَقَتْ لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ الْحُسْنَى. Sinners were going the wrong direction. And those who obeyed Allah, سَبَقَتْ لَهُم مِّنَ اللَّهِ الْحُسْنَى, with their track record, their obedience of Allah. These little sins that we commit, that we don't hold ourselves accountable for, we don't repent, we don't attempt to correct our mistakes in our relationships, in our private times, in our thoughts, in our prayers, all of it, the whole deal. Wherever we identify sins, if we do not take care of them, if we allow sin to accumulate, then we will be of those that this hadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, هُنَالِكَ اسْتَحْوَضَ الشَّيْطَانُ عَلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِ. The awliya of shaitan. The Quran tells us who the awliya of shaitan. God says, Iblis, you have wilaya over no one except for the ones who choose to follow you. If I choose to follow Iblis, I listen to him, I commit a sin, if I don't go back and say, God, I'm sorry. Adam did that, right? We have this example in the Quran for a reason. Adam listened to Iblis. God said, why did you do that? He said, I'm sorry. He repented. God says, you did that? You're going to be guided. You're going to be chosen. You're good. Okay, you fall, you make a mistake, you slip. All right. But when you recognize, when you realize, correct it. That's iman, that's taqwa. But I don't care. I commit a sin, someone brings it up to me, I shut them up. The inner voice of me says, you did wrong, I shut that voice up as well. And I just keep going, and I come and Imam Barga, the programs, poetry, maybe I do. And then suddenly you see this sheikh that's sitting up here is standing with the people who are enemies of the Imam of our time, al-ayadu billah, God forbid, if I allow that to just keep accumulating, eventually, God forbid. This is what the fitna was. And we hope that Allah helps us identify the fitna around us and we're able to remain on the right path. Sallallahu alayki ya abiha. Let's take our hearts to Medina for a few moments. These difficult days and nights of the Shahadat of the Lady Fatima Zahra salamullahi alayha. The most difficult times for Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. As some have said, the Zarbat of Ibn Muljam in Kufa is nothing compared to what happened to Ali in Medina. This is what killed Ali. This was when he received that blow in Kufa later years. Ali said, Fuztu Rabbil Kaaba. He was happy. But when the Prophet told Ali that after me, he whispered, and the Prophet whispered in the ear of Ali, he said, this will happen. They will break Fatima in front of you. Okay, be patient. Ali cried. Ali didn't say Fuztu Rabbil Kaaba at that time. What killed Ali is this occasion. Let's take our hearts to Medina. Sallallahu alayhi ya Fatima Zahra. السلام عليك يا ممتحنة امتحنك الله الذي خلقك قبل أن يخلقك فوجدك لما امتحنك صابرا صلى الله عليك يا أبيها صلى الله عليك يا قرة عين الرسول صلى الله عليك يا زوجة أمير المؤمنين يا حبيبة أمير المؤمنين يا أم الحسن والحسين. May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, O beloved daughter of the Prophet. Ya Rasulullah, we've heard when the angel came to take your life, he knocked on the door. Fatima did not allow him in. He didn't come in. After the third knock, you told her, this is Israel, my brother. He never asks permission to enter any house, but this is your house. He asked permission. Ya Rasulallah, they've gathered outside of the house of Fatima. Ya Rasulallah, they've gathered firewood. The Mal'oon has knocked.
We need Ali out, open the door. Fatima responds, I will not allow this door to be opened. He said, we'll burn the house down. She said, even if I'm in this house? He said, yes. They lit the wood fire up. The door is on fire. Fatima Zahra, salamullahi alayha, remains behind the door, doing the little she can to make sure, at least on her part, this door she does not allow to be open for them to take. Ali, Ruhi fidak ya ummah. They say the door is half burnt. It's a wooden door. When it burns, now it doesn't have the structural integrity to hold. They say the mal'oon got wind that she is right behind the door. He kicked the door as hard as possible. All the grudges he had against the family of the Prophet. Some have said this door obviously could not have stood without nails. There are metal nails in this door that must have been heated. When the door is knocked on Fatima Zahra, I don't know what all was done to Fatima. Where did the nail hit the body of Fatima Zahra? All I know, it says, the account says she called, Ya fiddatu khudhini, O fizza, take me, hold me, Ya Fatima, Ruhi fidaki ya ummah. All the injuries you endured, whether it was in the street when the mal'oon took away the paper of fadak from you, or behind the door, or when it was knocked down on you. These injuries prevented Ali from seeing her the way he used to. From this point onwards, Ya Fatima, Ruhi fidaki. I wish I was there in Medina, Ya Fatima. I wish I could have stood there between you and the door to break the fall of the door. I wish I was there behind the door so that the hot nail would penetrate my chest instead of yours, Ya Fatima. I wish I would have been there on the street when the mal'oon slapped you in your face, so that my face could have been your shield, and I would have taken the hint, Ya Fatima. I wish somehow your face would have been preserved. That was the only thing that Ali would be soothed with every time he came home, no matter how difficult things were. When he would come home and see your face, All the tiredness would go away, all the worries you would take away. But they say from this point onward, Fatima covered her face from Ali, even in the house. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم بالزهراء وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها بك يا الله 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 يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك وعلى محبة أوليائك. والله hasten the return of our Imam. Allow us to be his true and close companions. Ya Allah, help all those who are helping his cause, especially our ulama, our maraja, above all our leader. Ya Allah, forgive us all of our sins, forgive our parents, our grandparents, our relatives, all believers, those who are alive, those who have left this world. Ya Allah, grant all of us and all believers worldwide our hajat, our needs, our requests. Relieve all those who are suffering from hardships, difficulties, illnesses. Ya Allah, there are a lot of madhlumeen. Ya Allah, help them all. In Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Yemen, in Iraq, in Parachinar, in other places. Ya Allah, anywhere people are being oppressed, the lovers of the Ahlul Bayt are being killed. Ya Allah, help them all, relieve them all sooner rather than later.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein.
نا سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر، غربت کی انتہا ہے، نا سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر، غربت غربت کی انتہا ہے، نا سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر، غربت کی انتہا ہے، نا سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر. چند پتھروں نے مل کر محروما لکھ دیا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر، غربت کی انتہا ہے، نا سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر. تیروں بھر بھری قبا تھی اور خوب بھری ردا تھی، تیروں بھری قبا تھی اور خوب بھری ردا تھی، اور خوب بھری ردا تھی۔ جو شام سے بچا تھا زینب نے رکھ دیا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پہ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا۔ غربت کی انتہا دوپہر ڈھل رہے ہیں خیام جل رہے ہیں، دوپہر ڈھل رہے ہیں خیام جل رہے ہیں، خیام جل رہے ہیں۔ تصویر کربلا کی کوئی بنا رہا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پہ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا۔ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا، سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر۔ زندان کی گھٹن سے ہر لاش بے کفن سے، زندان کی گھٹن سے ہر لاش بے کفن سے، ہر لاش بے کفن سے۔ عابد نے جو سنبھالا وہ آنسو گر پڑا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پہ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا، سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر۔ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا، سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر۔ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا، سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر۔ کیا یہ دلیل کون ہے اس کی کمر میں خم ہے، کیا یہ دلیل کون ہے اس کی کمر میں خم ہے، اس کی کمر میں خم ہے۔ کئی بار آسمان نے سجدہ ادا کیا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پہ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا۔ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا، سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر۔ جس روز سے ہے چھوڑا شبیر نے مدینہ، جس روز سے ہے چھوڑا شبیر نے مدینہ، شبیر نے مدینہ، اس دن سے اور بھی کچھ سناٹا چھا گیا ہے، زہرا تیری لحد پہ غربت کی انتہا ہے نا، سایہ ناردا ہے زہرا تیری لحد پر۔
یا زہرا یا زہرا یا یا زہرا یا زہرا یا اے میری بی بی اے میری بی بی تیرے در پہ استغاثہ ہے تیرا ممنون میری شہزادی یہ جہاں سارا ہے یا زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا تو ہمیں حفظ اور امان دے دے اپنی چادر کا سائے باندھ دے تیری قدرت میں کیا نہیں بی بی تو جسے چاہے دو جہاں دے دے یا زہرا یا زہرا اے میری بی بی اے میری بی بی آنسوؤں نے دعا مانگی ہے تیری تسبیح ہی پڑھ کے دل نے تجھے پکارا ہے یا یا زہرا قرض مخروض کا ادا کر دے مفلسوں کا نصیب وا کر دے جن کی گودی بھری نہیں بی بی ان کو اولاد تو عطا کر دے یا زہرا یا زہرا یا اے میری بی بی اے میری بی بی بس تو ہی مراد دیتی ہے تیری چوکھٹ در الہی کا استعارہ ہے یا یا فرش مجلس پہ اور مصلی پر ہر جواں کہہ رہا ہے رو رو کر ہم رہے نہ رہے مگر بی بی تا قیامت رہے غم سرور یا زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا یا زہرا پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات
متوجہ زیارت
السلام علیک یا رسول اللہ السلام علیک یا نبی اللہ السلام علیک امیر المؤمنین السلام علیک یا فاطمہ الزہرا سید نساء العالمین السلام علیک خدیجہ الکبریٰ السلام علیک حسن مجتبی السلام علیک حسین سید الشہداء السلام علی الحسین وعلی علی ابن الحسین وعلی اولاد الحسین وعلی اصحاب الحسین السلام علیک بالفضل العباس السلام علیک زینب کبریٰ شریکۃ الحسین السلام علیک علی زین العابدین السلام علیک محمد الباقر السلام علیک جعفر الصادق السلام علیک موسیٰ کاظم السلام علیک علی رضا السلام علیک محمد تقی السلام علیک علی نقی السلام علیک حسن العسکری السلام السلام عليك صاحب العصر والزمان الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان السلام عليك خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك شريك القرآن السلام عليك مزر الإيمان السلام عليك إمام الإنس والجان السلام عليك إمام زمان هذا أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله مخرجك وظهورك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Qibla is going to start with his second language, series of his lectures, inshallah tomorrow 8 o'clock. So please be on time so he can start his lecture, 8 o'clock lecture or Majlis, inshallah 8 o'clock tomorrow. Thank you.